We've all heard that Jimmy Page and Robbie Williams, who used to be in Take That but became a big solo artist in his own right, have been neighbors and they've been squabbling a lot in the last few years. But it turns out Robbie Williams had a bigger foe than Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin. Stuart Epps on Rock History Music.
It's not easy. Yes, I did.
Well, it's interesting. You work with Robbie Williams and you work with Jimmy Page, and those two guys, they're all over the press of not like because of their. I mean, they live beside each other and they've had this row
Oh,
forever.
well, that's right. Well, it's not just that, and now I'm going to give you another piece of information that no one knows. Is that Robbie Williams is managed by a guy called Tim Clark, who I've known for nearly 50 years because he was working at Island Records when Rocket Records was going, and he's a great guy, a pure gentleman, and he became Robbie's manager and did an amazing job. When I worked with Robbie, he'd had one solo album called Life Through a Lens. And when he came to my studio, Life Through the Lens had sort of pretty much died a death, sold 20,000 copies. It was a failure. And so there's a David Enthoven. There was two managers. It's amazing how I remember things. Tim Clark and David Enthoven are Robbie Williams' manager. And Chris, who was running the record company, running EMI, Chris Briggs. It's Chris Briggs who rang me up and said, I've got an artist for your new studio. He's called Robbie Williams. I thought, well, I've heard of him. He was in that band. They were quite big. Take that. Anyway, so they came in and they came in with all this new material. And it was, Life Through the Lens was doing nothing. So it was very, very important that something happened here. I mean, and in all fairness to the management team and everything else, they were going to stick with him no matter what. And he was going through a lot of drugs and a lot of drink problem and all that. But on meeting Robbie, he's just great guy, great guy. Funny. His big. He's such a huge Elton fan. And even when we were working, he'd say, what would Elton do here? Or what was it like when you were doing this with Elton? He's such a big fan of Elton's. And at one point he said, I haven't spoken to Elton in ages. I said, look, hang on a minute. And I got him on the phone. I said, here he is.
My God.
Yeah, I mean, they were, you know what? I was trying to get them two together to write. They would have made such an amazing writing team. Because Robbie can't play an instrument. Well, he can play guitar just about, but he's a brilliant lyricist, and so lyrics, Robbie Williams, Elton, music would have been such a great partnership, But I guess in the end they sort of fell out over something, whatever it was. Actually, it's not so much Robbie Williams and Jimmy Page, you said. But the crazy thing is that I worked with Robbie, and he is a bit of a lad, as we know, but he was having an affair with this singer, who I can't remember her name now. But it was only a couple of months later that I was working with Oasis and one of the Gallaghers, what's his name? Liam Gallagher, Liam and Noel, yeah.
No,
Well,
that's right.
Liam was having an affair with the same girl that Robbie was having an affair with just a few months earlier. And at the time, the two of them hated each other. They were going to have a fight in England. They hated each other so much they were going to put on a boxing match. But they were both bonking, I can say that, the same woman. But anyway, when Robbie came in to talk about Robbie, he came in with this co-writer who you will have to do one of your, because I can never remember his name. And so I'm not going to be remembering it now. But the co-writer was a bit of a musical genius. And the two of them were an amazing partnership that came up with Angels, that came up with this subsequent album called I've Been Expecting You. But they didn't do it all. I didn't record it all. They'd already had quite a lot of it when they came to the studio that I had, Wheeler End. And we did some vocals, we did some backing vocals, we did guitars and keyboards and all sorts. And while he was there, they released Angels from Life Through a Lens, which just took him through the stratosphere, you know. And in fact, I sang with him backing vocals on the B side of it, and then, you know, subsequently, because it was a great album, the one that we did was a great album. It had Millennium on it, because it was a very clever idea to come up with the song Millennium before the Millennium and all that. But it was a brilliant album, and I can't remember who he was writing the songs with, but they were a great team. I mean, Robbie was just, I mean, he was a bit delicate because he was, you know, on drugs or whatever, or trying to come off this, that, and the other. But he was, he's a fascinating guy. I got on great. I just thought he was brilliant because he belittles himself. You see, he's this huge star, and he was still pretty big then. But he wasn't full of himself at all. He was the opposite, you know.
Yeah.
And yet when you see him on TV, because he is an actor, so when you see him on TV, he's like Mr. Personality, he's James Bond, you know, he's incredible, you know, and the camera loves him to bits. One thing I can say that's also a bit of a scoop is that when we were doing this album, he did a lot of out of tune. He wasn't perfectly in tune. And so what used to happen was, as he left the studio doing vocals, they'd come in with all this sky high equipment to tune his voice, because at that time actually auto-tune was in its infancy, really, and it wasn't a little plug-in, you know, it was like 15 pieces of equipment, you know, costing thousands and thousands of pounds. So they come in, they'd wait till he was out of the building because they wanted to spare his feelings, you see. So they didn't want to tell him what they were doing, which I understand, because everyone hates, well, a lot of people hate autotune. You know, they're just like, I don't need autotune. You know, why do I need autotune? I don't need it. So they waited until he was out of the building. Then they tuned his voice, and I think it taught him to sing in tune, actually, because if you keep hearing yourself, you know, and he probably just thought, well, they've twiddled with it somewhere, you know. But it was great working with him, and I'm pleased that we did the album. I didn't work with him again because he more or less moved to America anyway after that, and he's done very well.
We'll have more from Stuart Epps coming up the next few days. Remember, he produced so many people, engineered a lot of people. He was the engineer on the Coda album with Jimmy Page. Worked with The Firm, Twisted Sister, Elton John, Paul Rogers, Jimmy Page, and a host of others. If you want to get produced by him, he is available. Go to his website, stuartepps.co.uk. Remember, subscribe to our channel. We always love it when you join our team. Like our videos, spread the word, spread the videos on social media, and comment on them as well. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music.